Thank you, Senator Reid. Senator Cotton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony today. Congratulations on your nomination after a long and distinguished career of service to our nation. Admiral Davidson, I'd like to return to what the chairman discussed, those artificial islands in the South China Sea. Why is China building those islands?
China has long claimed the South China Sea as their own. It is my belief that they intend to establish the military structure that will help them control the air and sea lanes through that region of the world.
Do you have any doubt that despite their militarization of those islands, that the United States Navy and Air Force can keep those lines of communications open through the South China Sea?
It is our job, yes, sir.
How much do those islands raise the stakes for our partnership with countries on the littoral of the sea, like Vietnam and the Philippines, Malaysia, Australia, Taiwan?
Well, I think it makes it troubling. Their security relationships with us are very, very important to us and also important to their security. These islands are in areas in which there are conflicting claims. And while we take no position on how that's resolved, we do expect to see them resolved with mutual consent and as international law allows. And I think it's creating uncertainty amongst our partners and allies in that area.
Thank you. Let's look at one of those in particular, Taiwan, the only democracy on Chinese soil. What's your opinion on regularizing arms sales to Taiwan to be consistent with the Taiwan's Relations Act?
I think the Taiwan Relations Act calls for that. There should be regular arms sales. It calls specifically for us to help provide for the credible defense, help Taiwan provide for the credible defense of the island.
And ought we allow port calls between Taiwan and the United States Navy and vice versa?
We have not in our recent past, Senator. I understand that's something to discuss now. I haven't talked about it with Admiral Harris at any extent. I look forward to having that conversation across the interagency here and with the Congress.
And what about allowing Taiwanese participation in military exercises in the Indo-Pacific?
Again, Senator, those are new initiatives. I'd like a little time to consider that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if you could get back to us
I will.
In the first few weeks on the job, once you've had a chance to consult with Admiral Harris and the team you're going to have there. General O'Shaughnessy, it takes about 3 years these days to build and acquire a new ground-based interceptor. Does that seem like a satisfactory timeline to you for a missile that's fairly well developed and critical to our national security?
Sure, it does seem like a long time, and I don't have the details, but I would work closely with General Greaves on this.
I would encourage you to do so. I think it took about 18 months to build the Pentagon in World War II. Surely our nation can produce a missile that's so vital to our national security at a little bit faster rate than 36 months as the one who may be firing them. I assume that you have a pretty highly vested interest in trying to reduce that timeline.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at what you might call, as you say in your testimony, defense support to civilian authorities. The country faces a drug epidemic that has become a crisis. 60,000 people are dying a year from overdoses. That's more than died in the entire Vietnam War. Many of these drugs are coming in through Mexico, some through countries to Mexico South, some from Mexico itself, some via China into Mexico. What are your thoughts on what NORTHCOM can do to try to help civilian authorities interdict this flow of drugs?
Sure thing. Carrying on some of the activities that NORTHCOM is currently doing, we would be well served by doing so. I'd highlight two in particular. For example, being able to provide military unique capability to the Department of Homeland Security, who is a lead federal agency for the border security. For example, the U.S. Marine Corps deployment of their ground sensor platoon that has given law enforcement agencies some indications and warnings that they are able to act on. Another one would be the recently enacted use of the RPAs from Fort Huachuca, where they're actually flying the RPAs in direct support of law enforcement agents that can actually use that to find and ultimately detain people coming across the border. So I think these are just two examples of the types of things NORTHCOM is doing that we could continue on if confirmed.
Good, thank you. It's a very high priority. One last topic. One of your most high-profile missions at NORAD is tracking Santa every Christmas Eve. I assume this committee can count on your commitment to continue that venerable tradition?
Yes, sir, especially since my son Sam would want to see that as well.
Maybe you and Sam could go into the command center and take a few calls from kids as they call in and see if Santa has come into their area yet.
Yes, Senator.
Maybe even authorize for the day all military personnel to wear Santa hats instead of their normal headgear.
Yes.
Take it under advisement.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
generals.
Yes, and keep in mind, we're taking notes on this. Thank you, Senator Cotton.